Hi.
Hello. Welcome to the realm of ideas is free to all. This episode, what episode is this? It is episode, oh my God, this is the realm. Okay. I think it's for episode 78. Is it 78? Yes, the nature of the adventurous mind 2. We just had the preview on Wednesday. I forgot the number. And there's been a lot of technical glitches this last couple of weeks. It seems as if we're fighting against this machine. I apologize for my attitude. I was just kind of a little bit distracted because it seems as if I was just thinking, oh, I hope this tapes and I hope we didn't mess up and whatever. Anyway, so this is a part of a piece that we had done a while ago. Episode 62 was the first part. And what we charted was the idea of the relationship between the adventurous mind and that of the generation. Now, generation was something we talked about in relationship to Ortega Gasset, even though I think Ortega never wrote the book of the generations. I believe it was written by one of his, might have been written by Marias or one of his other students, who basically kind of had understood this concept by listening to Ortega in the School of Madrid, and then kind of basically writing it themselves. In fact, I think I remember reading that book about the generations and about the specifics. Ortega referred to it, but never actually went into detail. It's talked about loosely in The Revolt of the Masses, but the specifics of the generation and how it comes about, and its specifics, which were not really important to go into here, but as if the idea of the kind of idea of the destiny of individuals. And was kind of the first part we talked about in terms of the relationship to the adventurous mind and how the adventurous mind as a way sees this challenge of the coming time as one of its greatest adventures, or the potential for one of its greatest adventures. So anyway, I also had a kind of comment from Mr. Spock, and I kind of had given a brief piece which I had kind of read from Self-Reliance by Emerson, which I think is probably, if you are an individual with an adventurous mind, I think for the human spirit, Self-Reliance is the owner's manual. If there is an owner's manual to be given to an individual that aspires to have an adventurous mind and basically wants to be a full individual, this is probably the owner's manual. So anyway, let's just get right into that. And I'll start with this piece. Let's think, oh, okay. Hi, Penguin. Penguin's kind of like got herself a little perch here so she can kind of be with us. Okay, hi P. So that like just the top of her head. Okay, let me adjust that. There she is. Okay. Okay, also. All right. So let me read this piece so I can kind of clarify this. Okay. Whoso immortal, okay, whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms from must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness intent. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Absolve yourself to yourself, and you shall have the suffrage of the world. I remember an answer which, when quite young, I was promoted to make to a valued advisor, who was wont to importune to me the dear old doctrines of the church. On my saying, what have I to do with the sacredness of traditions if I live wholly from within? My friend suggested, but these impulses may be from below, not from above. I replied, they do not seem to me to be such. But if I am the devil's child, I will live from the devil. No law can be sacred to me but that of my nature. Okay. Good and bad are but names very readily transferable to that of this or that. The only right is what is after my constitution. The only wrong, what is against it. A man is to carry himself in the presence of all opposition, as if everything were titular and ephemeral but he. I am ashamed to think how easily we capitulate to badges and names, to large societies and dead institutions. Every decent and well spoken individual affects and sways me more than is right. I ought to go upright and vital and speak the rude and real truth in all ways. If malice and vanity wear the coat of philanthropy, should that pass? If an angry bigot assumes the bountiful causes of abolition and comes to me with his last news from Barbados, why should I say to him, go love thy infant, love thy woodchopper, be good natured and modest, have that grace, and never varnish your hard, uncharitable ambition with that incredible tenderness for black folk 1,000 miles off, or any this love afar, in spite at home, rough and graceless, would be such greeting. But truth is handsomer than the affectation of love. That that's beautiful. But truth is handsomer than the affectation of love. Your goodness must have some edge to it, else it is not goodness at all. The doctrine of hatred must be preached as the counteraction to the doctrine of love when that pulse and whines. I shun father and mother and wife and brother when my genius calls me. I would write on the lintels of the doorpost, whim. I hope it is somewhat better than whim at last. But we cannot spend the day in explanation. Expect me not to show cause why I seek or why I exclude company. Then again, do not tell me, as a good man did today, of my obligation to put all poor men in good situations. As for my poor, I tell them, thou foolish philanthropist, that I grudge the dollar, the dime, the cent. I give to such men to do not belong as do not belong to me, and to whom I do not belong. Okay, so that is really the testament, as Frank Lloyd Wright said, truth against the world. Now, a lot of people see that as hubris, as arrogance, whatever. The point is, you could be right, you could be wrong, but do not be so quick to renounce that which you feel is your nature. And that, I think, is a great explanation of what begins as the adventurous mind. So, P, what's
Yes.
new in Julie?
Well, I'd actually first like to shine a spotlight on
On
some.
Pingle?
No.
Oh, Penguin needs love too.
Okay.
Hi, Penguin.
Okay.
Penguin's listening.
Okay. I'd like to shed a spotlight on some singular and quite adventurous minds of a few well chosen by me specific pieces that were exhibited by some really stellar fine art dealers at the American Fine Art Fair that was just on at the Bohemian National Hall, which is a wonderful place. It is a Czech institute that has a lot of cultural events and has been hosting the American Fine Art Fair for at least the past couple of years, possibly longer. So I spoke with a number of the dealers. In fact, I was invited by the Somerville Manning Gallery. So I would like to say a big thank you to Victoria Manning for inviting me and to showcase uh, a piece by N.C. Wyeth. They show a lot of Wyeth work, the father, the son, the grandfather. And N.C. Wyeth did this amazing piece from The Black Arrow, A Tale of Two Roses. His fine art oil paintings were used in a lot of classic literature to very, very fine effect. Now, while there was a lot of glare on the
Mm-hmm.
painting, it is an incredible piece of work. So I took several photos, have a detail of the man at the fire, which is just gorgeous. N.C. Wyeth was a stellar painter. So I'm showing you some close ups. And this piece, they also represent Jamie Wyeth and Andrew Wyeth. So father, son, grandfather, all incredibly talented American artists. So I would just like to say thanks. And now I would like to just mention a few pieces, which are the products.
Let's
Yes.
not forget Tease Tea,
Oh,
our
yes.
great sponsor.
Our great sponsor, and I have part
Love
of
you
a
guys.
Tea Mint.
And I have a Jasmine.
We love you guys.
Yeah.
So I will focus on some very hospitable people at Keichel Fine Art. Can you hold up their brochure for the show? Now, they are located in Lincoln, Nebraska, and was one of the few art dealers who was not either from here in New York City or the nearby Philadelphia. There were a few people there. They have a huge building there, and I would like to send our greetings to Buck Keichel, the gallery owner and a director, and Chloe Losi, a gallery executive and director of their auctions, who also expressed a great appreciation for my paintings, which is really, really nice. This is fascinating. So, this, I will show you the full piece there. This is a very early painting by Grant Wood, the famous Grant Wood of American Gothic, a super
Okay.
famous work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is his piece from 1926 entitled The Young Artist. Now, why is this? This is a precursor to the explosion of his very adventurous mind. Hanging at the Met is Grant Wood's, I believe it's 1930 or 1931 Midnight Ride of Paul Revere.
Oh, that's
Why?
his?
Yeah. Why
Oh,
is that
okay.
such an adventurous work? Because he took a colonial American historical topic known to exist in colonial times with all the costumes and trappings and architecture of the colonial times, and he painted it entirely with Art Deco sensibilities. It's a brilliant piece. The perspective, the bird's eye view, the treatment of the trees, the foliage, Paul and his horse, everything about the sculpting of light and shadow. And they have, Keichel has fascinating pieces in that vein. Yeah. This is a Grant Wood piece in the Art Deco vein that is a brilliant piece. And this is when his adventurous mind in 1939 took over. And while there is glare and it's not alien
like
spacecraft, it kind of does. His incredible stylized horses in the snow with the spotlights, and there was no way to photograph it without, is a beautiful piece from 1941 called February. But these are a far cry from his earlier work. And it is a highly adventurous mind that applied Art Deco sensibilities to, what would have been, a fairly, known piece. Here is something that I'd like to also mention. Deborah Force Fine Art, which is here on East 69th, has a painting that at first glance looks like a Turner piece. It has the palette of a Turner piece, it has the look of a Turner piece,
Mm.
but in fact, it's a Thomas Moran piece. And he was famous for doing, American West towering landscapes. This is Venice.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to do a piece in Europe, there was quite a departure from the pieces, shows a very, very adventurous mind and a flexibility. And he was able to really apply his metaphorical content. Oh, I did take a quick shot from Grad's very Art Deco Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, which is at the
Mm-hmm.
and I would just quickly like to mention.
Don't forget the bookmobile.
Oh
people.
yes, I have to find the photo. Of
Also,
that,
thank you. We are
Yes.
now over 300 subscribers.
We had
Greatly,
310.
yeah, 310. So it's funny. We were just at 200, and it seems like, and again, I've enjoyed the process of speaking to people and kind of learning about them and their interest in what we do, and kind of not forcing this on anyone, but kind of finding ways to kind of introduce the idea and then kind of like having them become part of our little family, which seems to be growing, and it's really kind of cool and fun. Anyway.
You mentioned 2 other places?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, this is a piece by an American who actually lived a really long time named Julian Levi, Levi, lived from 1900 to 1982, basically almost the entire century. It is a harlequin, which looks like a surrealist painting by Max Ernst or Klee or Miro.
Really?
And yes, wait till you see this. That is a fascinating piece.
Uh-huh. And this is done in 1928.
Yep.
Okay. So
And
it's
this
kind of done at the
Yep.
around the same time.
Yes, and this is owned by the Schwarz Gallery, or one Robert Devlin Schwarz, who was a very, 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 very nice man and president of Schwarz Philadelphia. And interestingly, I showed a
That's
dozen.
right. You showed a dozen pieces at the Philadelphia American Art.
Yeah,
American Artist Fair.
the American Fine Art Fair that had been hosted some years back at the Philadelphia Armory. A private art dealer took a dozen of my paintings and exhibited them in the same show. So yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I remember there was you were between like a Mary Cassatt.
Several Mary Cassatts.
Yeah, I'm not a.
I'm not either.
Again,
so
I think that
So I wanted to. I'm going to mention one more place because this is quite an interesting piece.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. This piece is, and there was a bit of glare.
Mm-hmm.
This piece here, and I will show a quick close up, is at Quest Royal Fine Art, which is located on Park Avenue here in New York City at 79th Street. And it is by a very troubled artist who was quite inventive and had a very, very adventurous mind, Ralph Albert Blakelock, 1847 to 1919. He did not live all that long. He invented ways to use paint that wasn't paint.
Mm-hmm.
He used all sorts of materials and techniques to achieve color and texture that were wildly unconventional, and spent the last years of his life in a mental institution. But he created some really, really adventurous work. So that's what I want to mention.
Don't forget to mention the bookmobile.
Oh, yes. I have to find the name of it there.
And thank you for they gave us some nice books, and we appreciate
we
those.
had some beautiful and some catalogs.
Was Ray Bradbury? There they are. Speak Easy.
Okay, I found it. House of Speakeasy. They were parked on Lafayette Street in front of the Public Theater, and this group is the Speakeasy Bookmobile. They are on stage in schools and on the road. House of Speakeasy, who two of them are our new subscribers, is grounded in the belief that the ability to read and write enables a person to know their rights, to be confident in their identity, and engage boldly and empathetically with the world around them.
Love that.
Our programs support reading, writing, and public participation in literary culture. So we would like and support our friends and colleagues at the House of Speakeasy Bookmobile, where they give away free books.
That's cool.
And that is super cool. And they were really lovely guys, and they were all having really bad pollen allergies, and I brought them tea.
Oh, that's nice.
So yes.
What is I think there's a quote in the world it was like where the press is free. I think it was Thomas Jefferson.
Oh yes, it was.
And where the press is free and every man can read, all is well, or something.
Yes,
like that.
That's it, and it's on the library walk.
Yeah, it's on exactly. It's on the library walk up to the Schwartzman Library at the New York Public Library main branch, and I think that's really true. We had a really great friend. We still have a really great friend in San Diego called Traveling Stories, and Emily basically had a similar program where she felt that literacy was an important and valuable thing. In fact, when we used to work in the farmers, when we used to have our table, and Imaginaria table in the farmers markets, we were side by side with Traveling Stories.
Plug this in.
Traveling Stories was basically who kind of got us started on that, and that's actually that would kind of led to our mayor's invite, and actually we kind of had that like our citation for Art Science Complex. No, it was Imaginary Day or Art Science Complex Day.
It was Art Science Complex.
Right, Day. In San Diego, in San Diego, October 5th is Art Science Complex Day, and we kind of like a mayor's award. It was really cool. We were at City Hall and stuff, it's that was a lot of fun. But I think it's sad that we're in a situation where we have to have it where individuals, but we have individuals like Speakeasy and like Traveling Stories who take it upon themselves to make sure that we fulfill that promise that all men and women and children can actually read, because your emancipation, your independence, the potential to facilitate your adventurous mind comes from the ability to read. Was speaking with our friend Peely this week, and she was talking about the fact you can see it to the right of me, over my shoulder, where Julie sits, is a portion of our library, or the library, whatever we like to call it, and kind of like thousands of books that we've collected. I don't think that there's a more of a sanctuary, more of a place of security, of adventure. I mean, I've traveled the entire world. Oh, thank you, Pete. I've traveled the entire world and the entire universe simply without ever leaving that room, by simply just taking the words on the pages and filtering them through my mind and seeing the greatest horizons one can ever see. I think there's an individual who wants to physically traverse all time and space, and I think there's individuals who want to basically traverse all in time and space in their mind. And for me, I don't see a real difference between the two. I know that a person like Eileen Collins and a person like Neil Armstrong, they want to physically go there. And I just love that spirit. But as far as I'm concerned, when I have the opportunity, and unfortunately I don't have the opportunity as much as I would like to, I kind of retreat into our library and find that is the place that has basically kind of been the greatest sanctuary for my adventurous mind. I know that there are certain other places that I kind of find, and again, in a great city like New York City, you have places like the New York Public Library, you have places like the Morgan Library, the Museum of Natural History, the Metropolitan, the Frick, the Guggenheim, the Cooper Hewitt, and all these great cultural institutions. I think recently that one of the things that was interesting to me was the idea to not have a great humanities or cultural education, because my education is a technical one as an architect, and institutes of technology are different from universities or colleges. But when you come about to be in a place like New York City, you really don't need to have that as an education, because the streets are full of it.
Yes.
That's
beautiful.
Thank you, Pete. I mean, the bookstores that used to regale the streets are not really with us anymore. There used to be so many beautiful bookstores. I mean, and it was, you ran the gamut from like the socialist Marxist bookstores. I was wearing their little Che Guevara hats and little Mao t-shirts and stuff. It was like kind of funny, but again, and they would talk about like, oh, Europe, the coffee is just so much better and our cigarettes suck. And it's like,
it was really
it's
funny.
like, yeah, they're kind of playing at Marxist kind of shit.
There were the great muffin wars of 1996.
No, but again, it's like you never had to look far for a kind of like an invigorating discourse or discussion. It was great.
I do have a secret.
And then it was Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a great bookstore, and there were all there were a lot of independent bookstores.
A lot.
Yeah, and in fact, my favorite one, Barnes and Noble, used to have the medical bookstore.
That place was
God, when
it was gruesome and awesome.
When that place went down, it was, I think I cried for like 3 days because they had textbooks, and if you wanted to, I think that was probably where I became, for a polymath, that was heaven, because you went in there, it's like, microbiology, what's it? You'd pull out a textbook, like
many textbooks.
Oh, exactly.
And I don't know how students sold their used
exactly, because
textbooks.
you had all these used textbooks, and it's like you had these things, and you could kind of like, what's this? I think it's like for people, children love toys, and we love, and they I said we, because we are, and we love chocolate, and we love things, and in fact, here's
maple nib chocolate.
Now. So,
I gave you the last piece.
Pete.
Did you want to know a secret in the great
bookstore
wars of? I was the one who built the wild blueberry catapult system in the in the book wars. Yes. But should we talk about this?
Yeah. So let's look at let's look at your new drawing.
27 in. I might have to show it here. It's hard to get by.
Okay, move over.
Yeah, but Pingle usually goes over there. Because we have a lot to talk about.
We do. Well, yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, I think that we should.
Get to this, and then we'll get to it.
You usually hold it up while I talk about it, but I don't want you to do thing. And you usually don't have your books in front.
Well, okay.
Okay. Would you like me to hold them here?
No, Pete. Yeah, because we got to get to the topic. Because again, this was continued.
Yeah.
And we really kind of, we're half the program.
Right. Yeah. Now. So I'll be really, really fast. This is my drawing that I worked on at the Met. For those who know, we have 2 new subscribers, actually 3 from the Met. And if you zoom on in, it is a visualization of a brand new research article that conclusively proves that bumblebees can recognize, modulate, imitate, and interact with human music and human rhythms. It's a stunning article that just came out last week in Science, the journal that we get every week. And these tiny little violin-like instruments are from the musical instruments wing at the Met, and they are pochettes or pocket violins that were used from the 15th to the 18th centuries by traveling dance masters. So my drawing is called Pochette for a traveling dance master. In this case, the dance master is the honeybee. Okay.
Well done.
Okay, thanks. See, I was really fast.
That's true.
Let us get right
fast like a panda. No, and this takes us right into it, because I think what happens is, the adventurous mind is that person who kind of never really is ever truly satisfied. In my case, I was always kind of like provoked by my curiosity and my imagination. My curiosity was always kind of like there to kind of quietly offer questions to my imagination. And my imagination, which was in love with my curiosity, was
Yeah.
always kind of interested in kind of being playful and enjoyable and wanting to kind of like please my curiosity. There was a kind of a
Mhm.
love affair that they kind of like basically saw each other as greatest companions. And the one loved to kind of ask these kind of provocative questions, and the other loved to
Mhm.
fascinate the other one with the answers.
Agreed.
So, in this regard, I think
Mhm.
what we see is the fact that as one comes to understand and appreciate this,
Mhm.
we start to see the fact that, like, for instance, I think to myself that scientists, and I love scientists. So my best fact, I want to, I want to say hi to my friend who's celebrating and working on his Fulbright in Finland.
Mhm.
Great biologist, friend of ours, PhD from Berkeley.
Plant scientist and an entomologist.
And then
Yeah.
even though he went to Berkeley, I'm not going to hold that against him.
No,
He's still a really bright
we
guy.
still
We
love
still
him
love him. Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
Yes. Okay. I
Yeah.
think
Anyway,
we should
no.
really
So what I'm
launch
saying is,
into our topic.
in the case
Yeah.
where we think about the fact that scientists are kind of discovering this idea that the bumblebee has an understanding of music. We spoke about this briefly, either in the preview or before, about the fact that indeed our our own imagination is usually our limit. And I think the idea is to raise that horizon. And I think one of the horizons is, one, get over the anthropocentric idea of the
Mhm.
mastery of the human. I
Mhm.
mean, I remember again, I've talked about this too much, it's kind of sickening, but my lecture at the Museum of Natural History was geared towards the idea that why would I not expect that social insects and other animals are greater engineering wise and architecture wise than we are?
Mhm.
So to me, this is not a revelation. It almost seems as if we're
Mhm.
discovering something we should have known long ago about the fact that
Mhm.
in this case, why would not the insect that lives in a world of virtually almost completely sound and vibration would not understand music to a far greater degree than the greatest musicians that have ever lived on
They
this planet as
certainly would.
humans?
And
Right.
they would
Yeah.
understand an ancient music that is not known to humans at all.
Exactly. And I mean,
Mhm.
the example I gave was we often talk about the fact that there are animals and insects and other creatures that understand different ranges of sound that we can't hear, and it's because to them they're vitally important, whereas to us we are ignorant to these things. Now,
Yeah,
that
yes.
physical
Mhm.
ignorance, I would call
Mhm.
it a physiological
Mhm.
ignorance, is the capacity to which we basically fall below
Mhm.
this. And I think that's the kind of thing that we need to appreciate. So it's easy being humans only conversing with humans to kind of take oneself and their hubris. But we need to overcome this. And the
Mhm.
adventurous mind, I think, at least in my case, is always kind of seeing this as a battle that needs to be waged. Anyway, Sue.
Yes, I will quickly say I will be talking about three particularly adventurous minds. May I just say that the bumblebee, I believe, has recognized very specific types of organically derived music, notably from the resident frequencies of different types of pollen grains that are carried on the wind. And that is my
Hmm.
hypothesis.
That's interesting
Thank
because I
you.
would think that like they would understand a spatial connection to sound that's much greater than we have. I mean, I think that we kind of like
Mhm. We'll be up all night.
mm,
So anyway,
it's
yes.
okay. I mean actually since
Yeah.
I've actually started to actually generate lyric drawings,
Yeah, it's
which
great.
is to me like kind of
Mhm.
like one of the final pieces in the puzzles of
Mhm.
my idea for an organic architecture, I'm thoroughly excited. In fact, now that I have those two books, the one by Van Gogh and the one of Van Gogh's drawings, the one of
Yes.
Leonardo's drawings, I
Okay.
am quite ready to stay up all night
Excellent.
for days.
Okay,
Go
I'm going
ahead.
to
So,
launch into
so,
Emile Gallet
mm,
was an Art Nouveau artist extraordinaire known for his incredibly pioneering work in glass. He worked in every medium imaginable, and his work is literally the inventive pinnacle of Art Nouveau design. It is basically right up there with Hector Guimard and Lalique. I
Love
mean, they
Lalique.
were
Oh God,
the big three. Um,
Lalique is just
oh, I
it's
agree.
hard. It's
Well,
there's
yeah.
so many brilliant people, and it's like
Mhm.
I and Ruhlman, love Ruhlman.
True. I will point out though that Emil's very adventurous mind didn't stop at glasswork. He was a botanist. He was a very well regarded botanist, and in
Doesn't surprise
fact,
me.
exactly. In
Yeah.
fact, he actually insisted that the 300 or so workers in his glass factory used organic models from nature, real insects, real flowers, real plant specimens upon which to launch their imaginative abstractions from nature, which were etched onto glass, molded onto glass, blown into glass. Uh, he produced work that was pioneering. He also went to Germany and has a degree in philosophy. So, and he lived
Does
and
he?
died, yeah, in the city of Nancy, which
Where
is
was he
the,
in Germany?
I'm not sure where, but he studied in Germany. I can look it up. He was at a
Mhm.
specific, got a degree in philosophy. He was a very adventurous thinker. And he came up with the total work of art, which is something that we do, which is a cohesive, imagined environment that is the manifestation in architecture and design of the adventurous mind. That's my idea merged with his philosophy.
Hmm.
And his entire life and oeuvre was the complete work of art. It was philosophical,
Hmm.
it was botanical.
Let's see what I can
Yeah.
find. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah. Look, it says
Yeah,
on the
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wikipedia
I'm just gonna try to.
for him. So he achieved a philosophical structure of plants and flowers. These were not superficial decorations. They had a deep and profound philosophical core, and his work holds up beautifully over time. It's very hard to see here. There's probably a lot more of it in France. Should I move along to my next person,
Yes,
or would you like to?
yes, yes.
For my second adventurous mind, the Russian composer and chemist Alexander Borodin, who's one of my favorites. Most people do not know. Most people know his phenomenal opera Prince Igor and the famous Polovtsian dances. It is a very famous piece of music at the end of Act Two of Borodin's opera Prince Igor. His two amazing pieces of chamber music, his string quartets are incredibly hard to play. They are brilliant, they are innovative, and the entire time, as a chemist, which he considered his vocation, he was also a medical doctor,
Hmm.
a practicing one, a surgeon.
Hmm.
So, as a chemist, his work in organic synthesis was concerned with the construction of organic compounds at its infancy. He was the first chemist to demonstrate nucleophilic substitution. We don't have time to go into it, but for those who would like to know, I can explain it later over a cup of tea's tea. So, and he founded the School of Medicine for Women. So he was a very progressive thinker who died suddenly at a ball of a major heart problem he didn't realize that he had. So, anyway, Alexander Borodin, 1833 to sadly only 1887.
Interesting.
Did you look up the Wikipedia? Because
I'm looking at
it definitely says.
No, I know, I see it.
Should I move on to my third
Yes,
adventurous mind?
yes. And we want to talk. we want
Oh,
to
yeah.
talk more about the nature of the
Oh,
adventurous
yeah. Oh,
mind.
yeah,
And
yeah.
rather than kind of saying these people were, I
Oh,
think it's important that we actually
okay.
go into the specifics of why they were. I mean,
Well,
what I see so far in the
yeah.
people that you mentioned is a broad range of
Yeah.
activity. And I
Yeah.
believe that, like, that's one of the things that I think I see reemerging as a way in which people kind of look at
Mhm.
the broader picture. I think we become
Mhm.
highly specialized,
Oh, yeah.
and our technique has become really kind of like confounded as a result of it being too narrow in its focus.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, the
Anyway, yeah.
reason why I'm chronicling what these three people did, and I will tell
Mm,
everyone about the third
mhm,
adventurous mind,
mhm,
is they were wildly interdisciplinary before that word was even used or known. I mean, a doctor, an organic chemist, and a classical composer was Alexander Borodin. He was
mhm,
all of these things and brought his chemistry into his composition.
mm, mm,
If you actually listen to his compositions, they have a precision and an elegance and a stalwart structure, but it didn't stop them from being wildly beautiful
mm,
and incredibly
mm,
resonant. And as a surgeon, he really understood
mm,
structure because he understood the chemical structure of the
mm,
human body
mm,
and the
mm,
structure of music.
mm.
So,
Interesting. No,
yeah, I
I
mean,
think again, as an architect, the idea of understanding structure in a fundamental way,
mhm,
in terms of its basic organizational principles, is something that's just an inherent curiosity. It looks as if, like, given the time, looks like between Galilei, he probably is in the center of the Neo-Kantian school. People like Adamson, was it Poincaré? It's some of the other
mhm,
kind of like um, Herman Cohen. I think I can't remember a lot of the names, but
mhm,
I do remember because this was something that again, it was something that figures prominently in the history of philosophy.
mhm,
But I would probably be that regard. But again, that kind of looks as something as that these people had really spent a tremendous amount of time
yeah,
trying to kind of expand on and kind of like build the legacy of Kant. But at the same time, I would understand that this individual would probably see a certain kind of dissatisfaction, as you would see in other places with people who were kind of looking too much internally back into, rather than kind of seeing the opportunities beyond themselves. But I mean, Kant
yeah,
is one of those figures that basically, man, maybe one of the greatest, if not the greatest philosopher who's ever kind of
mhm,
we've been fortunate enough to have on the planet. So I
mhm,
think in the same way that I would say the same thing exists for, say, Whitehead, it would, I don't know if we've totally or will ever totally
mhm,
appreciate and understand the true magnitude of Kant.
mhm,
So that certainly seems like it would
yeah,
definitely be a great education, or certainly a great part of the idea of trying to understand the deep nature of kind of structure in a fundamental way.
sure.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Mm,
And to have a philosophical mind, to actually nurture and cultivate his philosophical mind, was why Gallet traveled to Germany for
mm,
no other reason than he found that to be the birthplace of the philosophical model that he wished to apply to his botanical education,
mm,
which he then applied to his innovative work in Art Nouveau glass art and
mm,
design.
mm, mm,
So that's how his adventurous mind worked.
mm, mhm,
There was
mhm,
a philosophical continuum, a
mm.
scientific
Yeah. I mean,
continuum.
it's like, honestly, I remember when I first, I mean, everyone hears about the Critique of Pure Reason, and you kind of try
Mhm.
to read it and you realize that it's one of those best things that if one is serious about studying a book like that, you do it with a partner. It's one of those things where there's a tradition in reading in the Jewish faith where you actually read things in tandem.
Oh, somebody told us about that.
Mm,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was really
but
interesting.
and I think it's something that really, if you want to have a great adventure, I believe that
Mhm.
there are certain books that you really would benefit by having a partner to read the great books like that.
Mhm.
So recently, somebody asked me, what was the diversion from where I was to where I am, and I kind of said, like, for me, it was always important to kind of take seminal texts, at least the ones that were available or accessible to my limited imagination, and try to get at least some attempt to kind of appreciate these things to the depth that I was capable of. And it's always good to kind of start by reading minor pieces of a
Mhm.
person first. But I find as if there were certain books that are indispensable to the way in which I come around to my thinking.
Mhm.
If there is a first and primary fundamental one, it's got to be Darwin's Origin of Species.
Mhm.
I think that The Origin of Species is the second greatest book ever written after the Bible. And again, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a person of
It's the
faith.
Bible of the adventurous mind, isn't it? Yeah,
Actually,
right? Well,
well, I mean, I
couldn't
like
you
I
say
said, I
that?
think
Or?
that self-reliance is the owner's manual for the adventurous mind.
Nice.
But I think no, because again,
Okay.
it's basically it's one of those things that provokes you into saying, "Hey, why are you not doing this? Hey, why are you not taking it as your challenge to kind of take upon those things that are within only your grasp?"
Mhm.
And I think that that's the kind of thing that I remember reading and just kind of like being incredibly filled with energy and excitement of like, yeah, absolutely. This is what I think. And it was a sense of
Mhm.
vindication because I find as if, as I said before, I mean, as the
Mhm.
institutions start to become stale and start to kind of like fall by the wayside,
Mhm.
what has to happen is those individuals of genius are those people who have faith in themselves and don't look behind themselves or look, you know, at anyone but themselves. And I mean, I love, I'm not going to disdain, I'm not going to put any kind of, I'm not going to downplay this idea of standing on the shoulders of great men. I mean, granted, that's always
Mhm.
the case. I mean,
Mhm.
we basically have to appreciate and acknowledge those people who forged the place for which we are, but at the same time there's a point where we basically have to acknowledge, hey, you know what, if I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to figure it out, and
Mhm.
I want to figure it out. I think, again, one of the things that I think calls an individual to the task is the fact that they want it.
Mhm.
They're willing to kind of like work endlessly, not think
Mhm.
about anything other, and they're not doing it for anyone but themselves. Now, again,
True.
once these things are discovered, there's
Mhm.
benefit, but the whole idea is that adventurous mind is that mind that will not take no for an answer. It will not be satisfied until it gets to the very depth,
Mhm.
the bottom of what it seems to be
Mhm.
necessary for the truth.
Hmm.
So anyway,
Oh, which is a great segue to one of my most favorite adventurous minds aside from this guy right here. Yeah,
hmm,
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, most
really,
people, oh yes, most people know him, 1859 to 1930, as the British writer who was actually born though in Scotland in Edinburgh. But
was he
the
really?
yes, he was. He was Scottish.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so sad.
he moved to England at a young age.
Good for him.
Anyway, Puddle, I want to get this
Yeah,
in.
go ahead.
Okay. He was not only the inventor of
Mm.
Sherlock Holmes and Dr.
Mm.
Watson in 4 novels and 56 short stories, some of my favorite things ever written.
Mm.
They are not written as pulp fiction, and I want to
Mm.
make this abundantly clear. Arthur Conan Doyle was an excellent, precise, imaginative, articulate, and wildly inventive writer. And aside from Holmes, he also authored over 200 short stories and essays and
Mm.
was a physician. He was a trained medical doctor
Mm.
who chose not to practice because his true calling for his adventurous mind could only be manifested in the written word. And he believed that. But here is the crossover. Here is how the truly adventurous mind works.
Mm.
Where does everyone think Dr. Watson came from? He is that doctor. In fact,
Really?
yes, in fact, all of the medical information, which if one carefully reads the Sherlock Holmes, you know, the stories and the novels and sees the incredible adaptations with Basil Rathbone and Nigel
Of course.
Bruce, which are the ultimate, they are peppered with real time medical information that is actually all accurate, meaning his deductive method, his very articulate use of, he invented pretty much the field of forensics. Arthur Conan Doyle did, and he's a Napoleonic scholar bar none.
Interesting.
He wrote my favorite Christmas gift that you got for me, which are 19 short stories set in the Napoleonic times, historically accurate to the most actually just beautiful, articulate, and flavorsome and humorous detail of one Colonel Etienne Girard of the Brigadiers.
And if we go back to, you were talking about Moran the painter.
Oh, yes.
His little known fact, his brother is Colonel Sebastian Moran.
Oh, that's really funny.
Funny.
Yes, he is. One was painting out west. One was trying to figure out ways to destroy Sherlock Holmes.
Was in Legion with Moriarty.
He was. He was his primary henchman.
He was.
And he had a truly adventurous mind that permeated every word that he wrote.
You know, I think it was interesting. I believe that one of the reasons why we have the technical service worker in so many different vocations is of specialization.
So sad,
and it's I mean, I see men and women of great passion in these things, but I just don't see the breadth of exuberance, of adventure. They seem very satisfied with the limited scope of their particular vocation. And I'm not gonna, kind of deride them or kind of, say terrible things about them, because I believe that they're kind of like the copyist in the fact that they're very happy to kind of be in their little place, just to kind of find out more and more about the specifics of that. But I just find that idea of the overall network of the entire structure, the entire network, it just seems as if imagination is always best when it's as broad as possible.
Yes.
And I just can't see it as truly imaginative. And maybe, I don't know, I think that's maybe an American spirit, but I do believe it grows out of a European spirit. And I think you see it in other places. I mean, you certainly see it in Asia. You certainly see it in India, and I think maybe, these aspirations exist in all people. And it's just that as technology and as kind of reason builds, these things become more articulate and specific in the way in which they manifest. Because I believe we now see, as we talked earlier, about the fact that the hummingbee, which I remember, the bumblebee and the hummingbee were always kind of like, I remember, they said, well, we really don't know how these things fly. They shouldn't be able to. Now, the reality was, it wasn't that they shouldn't be able to, is that we were too stupid at the time to understand. So we doubted reality rather than understand that the actual problem was our lack of understanding. And then when we realized the idea of like the vortex in which these things kind of manifest themselves and the turbulence that they created around themselves in order to kind of get a grip specifically on the air with themselves, we started to realize like, oh, got it. But again, it's that imagination like Maeterlinck has to kind of chronicle these things and start to kind of think about these things. And he's a writer. He's supposed to be doing beautiful prose and doing all kinds of things. And he's like, no, he's fascinated with these subjects. I think if there is a critical problem today, it's the narrowing of focus. And I think that's kind of a detriment to where we're headed. And in fact, ironically, or maybe not ironically, but interestingly, next week we're talking about the idea of what's next. Are we entering an era, an epoch, a generation, or whatever it is? But I do believe that one of the things that I believe we are starting to see with the tremendous dissatisfaction that we've talked about before, is the fact that we just aren't, we're not creating compelling mysteries. The institutions have a desire and they have an obligation to carry the legacy of past genius,
Mhm.
but they don't generate new genius. And in fact, usually they become inertial. And in fact, I'll find the quote, I'll use that from Aims of Education,
Mhm.
that Whitehead talks about that. Actually, I'll lead with that into the next
Mhm.
one, because in fact, the institutions have an important role to play,
Mhm.
and that's to kind of keep the testaments of the achievements of genius so
Mhm.
that we can verify and and defend the principles until new principles come about to replace them. So, last word, P.
Yes.
Let's wrap this up, big
The
one.
the the truly adventurous mind is expansive, not contractile. Thank you. And is always ravenous
Mm-hmm.
for new
Ravenous is the word,
information
right?
and loves the beauty of pure information
Mm-hmm.
and is always figuring out ways to manifest something fascinating that they have read, studied, invented, heard in new and scintillating and compelling ways,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is an essay, a novel, a painting, a composition of music, a scientific experiment, an architectural piece, a model, a drawing. That is the terrain of the truly adventurous mind, is an ever broadening environment.
Agreed. And I think what
Yes.
happens is,
Mhm.
as circumstance changes, and they talk about the different generations, there is the generation between 1960 and 1975. I mean, we look at the fact that 1900 to 1915, 1915 to 1930, 1930 to 1945, 45 to 60, 60 to 75, 75 to 90, 90 to 205, 205 to 220. I mean, when you look at all these things, there are specific markers in which you were brought up in a certain generation. Those generations create circumstances by which you see yourself of coming of age. And as a result, each generation lends itself to understand how it is to manifest itself within that circumstance. I mean, I was born in a generation between 1960 and 1975. In that time, we went from 1960, we kind of see the election of JFK. We see the race to the
Mhm.
moon. We see the assassination of JFK. We see the rise of civil rights. We see the assassination of great, powerful individuals, of leaders of this time. We lose Malcolm X. We lose Marcus Garvey. We lose Martin Luther King. We lose Robert Kennedy, JFK, and many
Mhm.
more. And we see the fact that people were so terrified of this idea of social enlightenment that
Mhm.
they attacked it. We see that.
Mhm.
And then at the end of 1975, we see ourselves in a different situation with the end of Watergate and the scandals, and the fact that we see these things where the corruption and manifestation, these are aside with the rise of the Cold War, this is the generation I come up in. And then I come through the generation of 1975 to 1990. And then that's a different situation. We go from the corruption of that to the end of the Cold War. And then from that, you see that from 1990 to 205, we see the rise of different things within the world and the change of enemies, and the idea of kind of like coming to the possibility of what could conceivably be a new horizon. I was born on the horizon of space, and now 60 years hence, 4 generations later, that generation has reemerged, but is further in the distance. I see that as a betrayal. Anyway, Pete.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was born in the late 1700s, so
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So the realm of ideas is free to all, and it's the benefit of all of us, right? To keep it exactly that way.
Precisely.
Stay free.